The sound you're hearing isn't just a pen scratching paper, it's the sound of a cage door swinging open. On the 80th floor of the Thorne Tower, Elara Thorne just signed away her marriage to billionaire titan Marcus Thorne. He's smug. His mistress is already picking out china. His lawyers from the Shark Tank at Skadden Arps are smirking. They think she's a fool. They think she just settled for pennies. But they missed one thing. They never wondered why she was smiling. The biggest mistakes are the ones you make when you think you've already won. The silence in the conference room was as thick and expensive as the Persian silk rug underfoot. It was a silence worth millions, curated by soundproofed windows that muted the roar of New York City 80 floors below. Sunlight fractured by the skyline glinted off the chrome legs of the Eames chairs and the suffocatingly large dark mahogany table. At the head of this table sat Marcus Thorne. Marcus wasn't just a man. He was an entity, a walking, talking corporation of ego and ambition wrapped in a custom Tom Ford suit that cost more than a teacher's annual salary. His hair, a distinguished silver at the temples, was perfectly coiffed. He was checking his Patek Philippe, a Nautilus blue face, with an air of exaggerated boredom. He was a man who hated being made to wait, even for his own triumph. Across from him sat his legal team, a trio of sharks in human skin, from the prestigious law firm Skadden Arps Slate, Mega and Flom. Their leader, a man named Mr. Grossman, had a face like a clenched fist. They had folders open, but it was just for show. The deal was done. And then there was Elara. She was the antithesis of the room. While they were all hard angles and dark wool, she was a whisper of soft power. She wore a simple cream-colored sheath dress by the row. No jewelry save for the thin gold band on her left hand. She would soon be surrendering. Her dark hair was pulled back into a simple, elegant chignon, revealing the clean, intelligent lines of her face. She looked not like a woman being vanquished, but like a curator observing a slightly dull exhibit. "Well, Elara," Marcus finally boomed his voice, accustomed to filling stadiums and boardrooms. "This is it, the end of an era, yeah?" He pushed the stack of papers across the table. It slid with a heavy, final thud. "My lawyers tell me this is exceptionally generous." He steepled his fingers, a parody of a magnanimous king. 5 million. A clean break. More than enough for a girl with your background to start over. Comfortably. The insult hung in the air, polished and sharp. Your background. The daughter of a failed inventor, not the heiress of a real estate dynasty, like Serafina Vanderbilt, the woman he'd been parading around the Upper East Side for the last 6 months. Mr. Grossman cleared his throat. "Mrs. Thorne." "It's Ms. Callahan, actually. Or it will be in a moment," Elara corrected him, her voice calm and clear like a bell. Grossman stiffened. "Ms. Callahan, my client's offer is final. It is contingent on a full and binding NDA, a non-contestability clause, and the immediate forfeiture of any and all claims to the Thorne family assets, properties and holdings listed and unlisted. You will vacate the penthouse by 5 p.m. today." Marcus chuckled a dry, grating sound. "Read it, Elara. Though I doubt you'll understand the nuance. Just sign where the little yellow tabs are." He was waiting for the tears, the pleading, the desperate last-minute negotiation for the Hamptons house or the Gstad chalet. He had his no prepared. It was going to be delicious. Elara looked at the stack. It was 3 inches thick, a monument to his victory. Then she did something no one in the room expected. She smiled. It wasn't a sad, resigned smile. It wasn't a bitter, angry smile. It was a bright, genuine, almost joyful smile, as if she'd just been told a wonderful secret. "Thank you, Marcus," she said, her voice full of a sudden, strange warmth. You have no idea what this means to me." She picked up the platinum-plated Mont Blanc pen provided. She didn't read a single line. She didn't even glance at the summary. She flipped straight to the last page. Thud. Marcus's triumphant smirk flickered. Swish. Mr. Grossman's eyes widened a fraction of a millimeter. Ilara's hand was steady. She signed her name Ilara Callahan with a bold, definitive flourish. She capped the pen, placing it neatly beside the document. There. The silence that followed was different. The expensive, curated silence was gone. This was a new silence, sharp and jagged with confusion. Marcus stared at her. This wasn't the script. She was supposed to be a puddle. She was supposed to be broken. "That's it," he stammered, the first crack in his flawless facade. You didn't even read it." "I don't need to," Ilara said, standing up. She smoothed the front of her dress. "You said it yourself. It's a clean break. And frankly, Marcus, I am desperate to be clean." She turned to Mr. Grossman. "My lawyer, Mr. Arthur Harrison, has a copy. He advised me to sign." Grossman's blood ran cold. Arthur Harrison. The quiet, unassuming probate lawyer. Why would he be involved? He wasn't a divorce shark. This was a mismatch. Ilara walked to the door. Her heels made a sharp, definitive click-clack on the imported marble floor. "Ilara, wait." Marcus called out, a note of unease creeping into his voice. "The $5 million. My accountant will wire it." "Oh, keep it," Ilara said, turning her hand on the ornate brass handle. Her smile was blinding now. "Consider it a tip for services rendered. After all, you taught me so much." She opened the door and walked out, leaving the most powerful man in New York and his $3,000 an hour lawyers sitting in a room that suddenly felt like a tomb. What the hell just happened? Marcus whispered, his face pale. Mr. Grossman was already frantically texting his associate. "Find out everything you can about Arthur Harrison. Now." But it was already too late. Their story was the kind Vanity Fair wrote breathless prose about. Marcus Thorne, the 45-year-old self-made real estate and tech mogul, and Ilara Callahan, the 28-year-old associate curator at the Guggenheim, with a brilliant mind for modern art, and a past she kept politely vague. They met at the museum's annual benefit. He was the benefactor. She was the one who explained to him with devastating quiet intelligence why the Jackson Pollock he'd just acquired wasn't just splatter paint, but a revolutionary act of physical memory. He was obsessed. He hadn't encountered a mind like hers, one that didn't just fawn or flatter. She challenged him. When he tried to buy a piece she wanted for the museum, she out-negotiated his private buyer. When he tried to impress her by listing his assets, she'd countered by quoting Foucault. He'd pursued her with the same ruthless focus he used for a hostile takeover. It wasn't a courtship. It was a siege. There were dinners at per se impromptu trips to Paris, to see the new wing at the Louvre, and a waterfall of gifts. A Patek Philippe watch, a custom Bentley, a rare first edition of Ulysses. Ilara wasn't naive, but she was hopeful. She saw the brilliant, driven man beneath the billionaire armor, and her own life had been one of quiet struggle. Her father, a brilliant but gentle engineer named Dr. James Callahan, had lost his small tech company, Callahan Innovations, years ago in a brutal corporate buyout. He'd died 6 months later, heartbroken and broke. Ilara had put herself through school, vowing to one day buy back his legacy. Marcus felt like security. He felt like a fortress. She married him at a lavish $10 million wedding in the Hamptons. The press called her Cinderella. But a fortress, she learned, is just a polite word for a prison. The golden cage snapped shut almost immediately. Her job at the Guggenheim. "Darling, a Thorne doesn't work. You're a philanthropist now. You can run my foundation." The foundation, she quickly discovered, was a PR machine with a board of his sycophantic yes-men. Her friends, a bit common. "Don't you think you're meeting with royalty now, Elara? Your old college roommate? What's her name? She just doesn't fit." The control was subtle at first. It was wrapped in the guise of luxury. "Don't worry about driving. I have a full-time driver for you." So he always knew where she was. "My personal shopper will stock your closet. You deserve nothing but the best." So he could dictate how she looked. "Let my financial team handle your father's leftover debts. You shouldn't have to worry your pretty head about money." So he could control her last remaining tie to her past. The man she thought she saw beneath the armor wasn't there. There was just more armor all the way down. The breaking point didn't come with a bang. It came with a bracelet. It was 6 months ago at his 48th birthday gala. He had been distant, locked in his study for weeks, closing a big deal. She was playing the perfect hostess in a breathtaking Oscar de la Renta gown when she saw it. Tucked into the pocket of the tuxedo he'd left in his dressing room, a small, iconic red Cartier box. Her heart had, for a stupid, hopeful second, fluttered. He had remembered their anniversary was next week. She opened it. Inside, nestled on black velvet, was a Cartier love bracelet. Rose gold. Pave diamonds. A $40,000 token. But it wasn't for her. She knew this intrinsically. He'd given her the yellow gold one on their first anniversary. This was different. She'd quietly closed the box, put it back, and walked out to greet her guests. Later that night, she saw it gleaming on the wrist of Serafina Vanderbilt, the 25-year-old daughter of his biggest rival. Serafina, who laughed too loudly and looked at Elara with a pity that burned hotter than any hatred. That was the night Elara stopped being a wife. She became an archaeologist. She started digging. Not for evidence of the affair that was boring and she didn't care. She was digging for leverage. She remembered something her father always said. A man who builds an empire that fast. Elara is a man who cut corners. And cut corners always snag. She'd hired Arthur Harrison, a man who had been her father's estate lawyer. He was quiet, meticulous, and most importantly, invisible. He was the last person Marcus Thorne's high-powered wolves would ever see coming. While Marcus was flying Serafina to St. Bart's, Elara was in her husband's home office. While he was at late-night meetings, she was using the data recovery skills she'd learned in college to access his private server. Not the main Thorne Industries server, but the old forgotten one in the corner, the one he thought was just a relic. And there, buried in a subfolder, labeled Acquisitions Archive. She found it. A file named Project Phoenix. It wasn't a file. It was a grave. It was the complete, unredacted record of the hostile takeover of Callahan Innovations. She saw the memos, the fabricated defaults, the backroom deals to depress the stock, the final brutal buyout for pennies on the dollar. And she saw the name over and over as the principal investor behind the shell corporation that bought it. M. Hanault or Sebza Thorne. He hadn't just destroyed her father. He had been the one holding the hammer. He had bought her father's core, patent, a revolutionary data compression algorithm for scraps, and that patent was the seed from which the entire Thorne Industries tech division had grown. He hadn't just built his empire on her father's ruin, he had stolen it. She sat in the dark for hours, the blue light of the monitor illuminating her face. The Patek Philippe on her wrist, the one he'd given her, ticked softly, marking the seconds of her old life ending and her new one beginning. The fortress, she realized, had a blueprint, and she was now holding it. "My lawyers tell me this is exceptionally generous," he had said. Ilara had copied the entire server. She backed it up onto a separate encrypted drive. She gave one to Arthur. The other she kept. The 5 million was an insult. The divorce, a distraction. She wasn't after his money. She was after his spine. The elevator ride down from the 80th floor was silent. Ilara stood at the back, a small, satisfied smile playing on her lips. A few associates, recognizing her, offered nervous, tight-lipped nods. They all knew. The divorce had been the juiciest gossip in the New York Post's page 6 for weeks. They saw a woman exiting the building for the last time with nothing but the very expensive clothes on her back. Ilara saw the finish line. She bypassed the main lobby with its towering, sterile sculpture. One of hers, she'd ironically curated it. She took the private elevator, the one with the biometric scanner, down to P1, the executive garage. This was Marcus's holy of holies, a climate-controlled, museum-grade showroom for his car collection, his babies. A line of Ferraris, a vintage Aston Martin DB5, a muscular Bugatti Veyron, and in the center, under a dedicated spotlight, was his crown jewel, the one-of-one, bespoke Rolls-Royce boat tail, commissioned for a rumored 28 million $, since it was the most expensive new car on Earth. Its color was a unique, shimmering thorn blue, a color he'd spent $1 million developing. Its rear deck opened like butterfly wings to reveal a hosting suite with a champagne fridge and custom-built Christopher picnic set. It was the ultimate symbol of his grotesque, suffocating wealth. As Ilara approached it, her heels clicking in the cavernous silence, a voice barked, "Ma'am, stop." Two of Marcus's personal security team, beefy men in black suits with discreet earpieces, moved to intercept her. Mrs. Thorne, the lead one named Frank, set his face a mask of professional regret. You don't have access to this level anymore. We have orders to escort you out." "That's Miss Callahan. Frank," Ilara said sweetly. "And I'm not here for the other cars. I'm just here for mine." She continued walking toward the boat tail. Frank physically blocked her path. "Ma'am, I can't let you do that. Mr. Thorne's orders were explicit. You are to leave the premises. A cab has been called for you." "A cab? How very practical," Ilara sighed. "Frank, you're a good employee, but you're paid by Mr. Thorne. I, on the other hand, am paid by no one, which means I have nothing to lose. Please step aside." "Ma'am." Just then, the private elevator dinged. The doors slid open, revealing Marcus Thorne, his face a thundercloud. Mr. Grossman was at his heels, looking pale and sweaty. "Ilara!" Marcus roared, his voice bouncing off the polished concrete. "What in God's name do you think you're doing, trying to steal one last souvenir?" He strode over, radiating fury. He was back in control. This was his domain. "This is pathetic even for you," he spat. "Get out. Frank, get her out." "I'm just leaving Marcus," Ilara said, her gaze fixed on the car. "You're not taking anything," he hissed, grabbing her arm. "The prenup was ironclad. The divorce is signed. Everything in this garage, in this building, in this city belongs to me." "Everything?" Ilara asked, her voice dangerously quiet. "Are you sure about that?" She shook off his hand, not with force, but with a weary finality. She reached into her simple, elegant Bottega Veneta clutch, one of the few things she'd brought with her, and pulled out 2 items. One was a small leather-bound key fob. The other was a single folded piece of paper. She pressed the fob. Bloop, bloop. The Rolls-Royce boat tail chirped happily, its thorn blue paint seeming to shimmer in welcome. The security guards froze. Marcus's jaw went slack. "What is that?" Marcus whispered. "It's a key, Marcus," Ilara said, unfolding the paper. "And this is a title, or to be precise, a certified notarized deed of gift. She held it up for him to see. Mr. Grossman lunged forward and snatched it. His eyes scanned the document, his breathing becoming short, panicked wheezes. "It's a forgery," Marcus snapped. "It's not," Grossman whispered, his face ashen. It's his signature. It's legitimate. Notarized by Arthur Harrison. Dated 1 year ago." "What?" Marcus looked from the paper to Ilara, his billion-dollar brain finally catching up. Ilara turned to him, her smile gone, replaced by a glacial calm. "Do you remember our 2nd anniversary? Marcus, you were 3 no-4 martinis in. You just lost the bid on that ugly de Kooning to Serafina's father. You were furious. You needed to prove you were still the biggest man in the room." She stepped closer, forcing him to look at her. "You dragged me down here. You stood in front of this monument to your ego, and you yelled, 'It's all mine, but I can give it away. I'm so rich, I can just give it all away.'" She mimicked his drunken, boastful voice. "You grabbed my face, and you said, 'You want it. Is that what you want, little Ilara? The car, fine. It's yours. A gift? Let's make it legal.' You thought it was the grandest joke in the world, proving you could give away a $28 million car and not even feel it." "I was drunk," he snarled. "Yes," Ilara said. "But I was sober, and my assistant, who you so kindly let me hire, was a notary, and Mr. Harrison had already drawn up the papers just in case. You signed it, Marcus, right there on the hood." She pointed to a spot on the gleaming thorn blue paint. You tricked me." He breathed, the full, horrifying scope of it dawning on him. "You underestimated me," she corrected. "You saw me as an acquisition, an accessory. You never ever saw me as an equal. You thought I was signing away my claim to your assets. But Marcus," and here her smile returned sharp as a diamond, "I was just legally separating my property from yours." She walked to the driver's side door. The handle presented itself to her. "The divorce papers I signed," Ilara continued, her voice echoing in the garage, "explicitly state that all assets previously gifted and legally titled are not part of the marital estate to be divided." Mr. Grossman looked like he was going to be sick. "She's right, Marcus. Clause 3F. Previously titled gifts. I thought it meant the jewelry." "You thought it meant the jewelry," Ilara scoffed. She slid into the plush, handcrafted leather seat. It smelled of newness and victory. She pressed the start button. The V12 engine purred to life, a deep, satisfied rumble that was the most beautiful sound she had ever heard. "You can't do this," Marcus shrieked, his composure completely gone. He was no longer a titan. He was a spoiled child. "That's my car. It has my name on it." Ilara rolled down the window. "Actually, thorn blue was my suggestion, darling. I always thought it was the perfect color for a bruise." She put the car in drive. "Frank, stop her. Security." Marcus screamed, pounding on the hood. Frank and the other guard looked at each other, then at Mr. Grossman, who just gave a helpless, defeated shrug. It was legally her car. If they touched her, it was assault. "Goodbye, Marcus," Ilara said. She revved the engine. Marcus, in his $3,000 Tom Ford suit, had to leap out of the way as the $28 million Rolls-Royce boat tail, the crown jewel of his collection, smoothly, powerfully, and legally drove past him. She didn't look back. She just turned up the radio, a soaring opera aria filling the cockpit, and pointed the car towards the exit ramp and the sunlight of a new life. The drive through Manhattan was a victory lap. Tourists on Fifth Avenue stopped and pointed their camera phones, flashing, capturing the impossible sight of the one-of-a-kind, thorn blue boat tail gliding through traffic. They assumed it was Marcus Thorne. No one, not even for a second, would assume it was the wife who had just been publicly discarded. Elara, however, was not heading for a 5-star hotel. She was not driving to JFK to flee the country. She was, as always, following a plan. She drove out of the city, the hum of the V12 engine, a soothing counterpoint to the adrenaline singing in her veins. She drove for 2 hours past the city's sprawl, out to the glittering exclusive stretch of coastline known as the Hamptons. She didn't drive to the massive, sterile, glass and steel monstrosity that Marcus called his summer White House, that she knew would be the first place he'd send his lawyers. Instead, she pulled into the long gravel driveway of a much smaller, more elegant estate. A classic shingle-style home in Sagaponack, nestled behind ancient weeping willow trees. It was the one property Marcus had bought found too quaint and too old, and had promptly forgotten about letting it fall into disrepair. Or so he thought, as Elara parked the boat tail in the newly built, temperature-controlled 4-car garage. The main house's lights flickered on. The door opened, and Arthur Harrison stepped out onto the wraparound porch. He was a man in his late 60s, with a shock of white hair and a kind, unassuming face. He was holding 2 glasses of champagne. "Right on time, Miss Callahan?" he said, his eyes twinkling. "Please, Arthur, it's Elara." She took the glass, the crystal cool against her skin. "To clause 3F. To clause 3F, he agreed, and they toasted. The champagne was a Dom Perignon 2008, vintage. He was surprised, Elara said, taking a sip. "I imagine he was," Arthur chuckled. "But the car, my dear, was just the appetizer. Shall we review the main course?" They walked inside. The house was not the wreck Marcus believed it to. For the last 6 months, Elara had been using her foundation money, the one thing Marcus encouraged her to spend, to secretly restore it. It was now a state-of-the-art command center, hidden behind the facade of old money charm. In the study, what was once a library was now a wall of monitors. "The moment you signed those papers," Arthur said, pointing to a screen, a series of preset triggers were activated. As you know, Marcus's generous divorce settlement was contingent on a full NDA, but that NDA only covers the marriage. It specifically, per his lawyer's drafting, does not cover any information pertaining to illegal business activities, as that would be obstruction of justice. Mr. Grossman's one moment of ethical lawyering, Elara mused. Precisely. He was protecting himself from being an accessory. He never dreamed you would be the one to have the evidence. Arthur pointed to another screen. Now the car was lovely, but the house we are currently standing in, this is the real victory of Clause 3F. Elara smiled. The forgotten properties. Indeed, when Marcus's team drew up the asset list, they used his primary financial report. They listed the penthouse, the Hamptons, White House, the Gstad Chalet, the Jet. They did not list this house, nor the small art storage warehouse in Brooklyn, both of which Marcus had transferred into a shell LLC, Callahan Holdings, to write off as a loss 6 years ago. He put them in my name to hide them from his partners, Elara said, remembering the day. He'd made her sign a stack of papers telling her it was boring tax stuff. He did, Arthur confirmed. He used your maiden name, thinking it was clever, but by doing so he legally established them as your sole and separate property long before the marriage. When you signed the divorce, you didn't forfeit them. You confirmed your ownership. Welcome home, Elara. This house and the warehouse were her war chest. They were the two places Marcus had no visibility into, no control over. And the warehouse? Elara asked, her voice tight with anticipation. Secure, and what was inside it is even more so. Elara had spent the last 6 months doing more than just planning her escape. She had been quietly moving, Using her curatorial skills, she had been deaccessioning pieces from the penthouse. A small, insignificant Jean-Michel Basquiat painting, a second-rate Giacometti sculpture, a set of forgotten first-edition books. In reality, she had been liquidating the most valuable, most portable, and crucially most undocumented assets Marcus owned. He had bought them at auction, under Elios's paying cash to hide them from his business partners, and from his wife in the event of a divorce. He had hidden them so well he'd forgotten to list them in the divorce, and Ilara, using her knowledge of the art world, had sold them, quietly, privately, through a Swiss broker for cryptocurrency. The car was worth $28 million, the house was worth $15 million. The art she had sold, a little over $75 million. Arthur said, pulling up the statement for a secure encrypted account at a bank in Zurich. Wired this morning. Marcus had offered her $5 million. Ilara had just walked away with $118 million. She let out a breath she felt she'd been holding for 5 years. She wasn't just free. She was for the first time in her life powerful. "He'll be furious," she said. "He'll be apoplectic," Arthur corrected. "He will try to freeze your accounts. He will fail. He will try to claim the sales were fraudulent. He will fail as he was the one committing the fraud by hiding them. He will try to contest the divorce. And he will be too busy," Arthur said, his smile fading, his expression turning serious. He gestured to the last and most important item in the room. On a side table plugged into a secure air-gapped laptop was the encrypted hard drive she had copied from Marcus's server, the one labeled Project Phoenix. "The money is your shield, Ilara," Arthur said. "It allows you to fight. But this is your sword." "He thinks I just wanted his money," Ilara said, picking up the drive. It felt cold and impossibly heavy. "He's about to find out," Arthur replied, "that you wanted his legacy. Marcus Thorne did not do panic. Panic was for lesser men. Panic was for day traders and middle managers. He was a titan. Titans did not panic. They acted. The moment the Thorne blue boat tail had disappeared onto Park Avenue, he had entered a state of cold, white-hot fury. "Get me, Grossman!" He had roared back in the 80th floor conference room. Mr. Grossman, who had been hiding in the adjoining bathroom, reappeared, his $5,000 suit darkened with sweat. "Fix this," Marcus commanded, pointing a trembling finger at the lawyer. "Marcus, I'm not sure we can—" "I don't pay you $3,000 an hour to be not sure." Marcus swept a carafe of water off the table. It shattered, and his legal team flinched. "She stole my car. Technically, Mr. Thorne, you gave it to her." Grossman stammered, holding the deed of gift like a dirty diaper. "The signature is valid. The notary is valid. The clause in the divorce settlement, our clause, it's ironclad. Then un-iron it. Contest the divorce. Claim incompetence claim. Claim she drugged me. On what grounds? Your own testimony." "Your Honor, my wife, the curator, plied me with martinis, and I got so drunk I accidentally gifted her a $28 million car." Grossman was visibly shaking, but he knew this was a career-ending moment. "She played us, Marcus. She played us all." Marcus stared at him, his breathing heavy. The cold dread was beginning to seep past his rage. Ilara, quiet, mousy art history Ilara, had played him. "Freeze her accounts," he growled. "The $5 million. Freeze it. We can't—" A junior associate squeaked from the corner. Marcus's gaze snapped to him. She never accepted the wire. She never gave us her bank details." "The old accounts, then. The joint accounts. The household account. Empty," the associate said, staring at his laptop. "All of them. Drained over the last 6 months. Small, non-flagged withdrawals. The final one for $10,000 was made 1 hour ago. Where? Cash, the associate whispered. All of it. Untraceable. Marcus sank into his chair. The 80th floor view suddenly seemed dizzying. He had been robbed. But how? Serafina, he muttered. He needed comfort. He needed his adoring, simple, predictable mistress. He pulled out his phone. Serafina Vanderbilt was at the penthouse. She was, as he had instructed, not to be there for the signing, but was to arrive at 5:01 p.m. for the victory champagne. She was at this very moment in Ilara's her new closet, trying on Ilara's collection of Birkin bags. The phone rang. "Marcus, darling," she trilled. "Is the witch gone? I'm trying to decide if I should keep this awful orange crocodile or just burn it." "Sarah, listen to me," Marcus said, his voice strained. "Ilara, she did something. Did what cry all over your suit? Don't worry, darling, I'll buy you a new one." She took the boat tail. The line went silent. "What that? That joke of a car? The blue one? Why, it doesn't even match her shoes." "She stole it, Sarah. She claims I gave it to her." "Well, did you?" Serafina asked, her voice losing its playful edge. It was a joke. I was drunk." "Marcus." Serafina's voice was suddenly as cold as the diamonds around her neck. "My father warned me you were a sentimental drinker. You gave the $28 million car to her. It's being handled," Marcus barked. "My lawyers are on it. Are they? Because I'm looking at page 6, darling, and oh my." "What?" "Someone's just snapped a photo of it. Parked in Sagaponack, outside that dumpy old house you couldn't sell. Why would she go, oh? Oh, what?" Marcus roared. "It's just the caption," Serafina said, a new sharp note of calculation in her voice. "It says Ilara Thorne's new ride, or just a visit to her other Hamptons property." Marcus's blood turned to ice. "What? Property? The LLC, Marcus Serafina," said her voice dripping with contempt. "The Callahan Holdings one. The one you put in her name to hide from me, from my father. The one I told you was sloppy. She can't. That's my house. Is it Marcus is your name on the deed, or is hers?" Marcus dropped the phone. He looked at Grossman, his face a mask of primal terror. "Get the asset list, the full list, the shell companies. Get it now." The junior associate was already typing. His face went from pale to ghostly white. "Mr. Thorne," he stammered. "Callahan Holdings, LLC. It also owns a warehouse in Brooklyn, a large one. The tax filings list its contents as archival art storage." Marcus's vision tunneled. The Basquiat, the Giacometti, the other things, the cash purchases, the pieces he was holding for a rainy day. Call the warehouse," he screamed. It's empty, sir," the associate said, reading a report. "The LLC terminated its lease this morning. The property was sold. A cash buyer." Marcus Thorne finally did something he never did. He panicked. He stood up his chair, toppling over. He ran from the room. He ran to the elevator. He had to get to the warehouse. He had to see. He left Mr. Grossman and his team standing in the wrecked conference room. "My God," Grossman said, sitting down heavily. "She didn't just take the car." "What did she do?" the associate asked, his hands shaking. Grossman looked at the signed divorce papers at Ilara's confident flowing signature. "She didn't take his money," Grossman whispered, the horrifying, beautiful, terrible truth dawning on him. "She took her money. She just let him think it was his for 5 years." He looked up, a strange, terrifying respect in his eyes. The man just lost over $100 million and paid his wife $5 million for the privilege of her letting him. He picked up the phone. clear my schedule for the next decade. And get me Arthur Harrison's number, not for a lawsuit, for a job application. The sun was setting over the Sagaponack Inlet, painting the sky in violent, beautiful strokes of orange and purple. Elara stood on the porch, the breeze from the ocean cool on her face. The $118 million was in her account. The $28 million car was in her garage. The $15 million house was secure under her feet. She had won. She had eviscerated him. So why did she feel incomplete? "The shield is in place," Arthur Harrison said, joining her. He'd traded his suit for a comfortable cashmere sweater. "Now are you truly ready to use the sword?" Elara looked at him. Arthur wasn't just her lawyer. He had been her father's. He had watched helpless as Marcus Thorne's shell corporations had torn James Callahan's company apart, shred by shred. He had held Elara's hand at the funeral. This wasn't just a case for him either. This was a redemption. "He thinks this was about the money," Elara said, her voice low. "He thinks this was a high-stakes robbery. He's furious, but he's relieved. He's thinking, I lost $100 million, but I still have my billions. I still have my empire." "He's a fool," Arthur said. "He's a monster," Elara countered. "And he's about to find out what I really bought with my time." She turned and walked back into the study, to the secure, air-gapped laptop. She picked up the encrypted hard drive. Project Phoenix. She slotted it in. After a series of passwords, the drive mounted. It wasn't just a file. It was a digital copy of a physical ledger, a dark green cloth-bound book that Marcus Thorne, in his early pre-Titan days, had foolishly meticulously kept. He thought he had destroyed it. But he had only destroyed the book. He had kept the digital scan on that old server, a trophy of his first kill, too arrogant to believe anyone would ever find it or understand it. But Elara understood, because she had spent the last 5 years of her marriage not just learning art, but learning him, learning his business, learning his code. The file opened. It was, as she remembered, a line-by-line, date-by-date accounting of the real story of Thorne Industries, and it all started with Callahan Innovations. The ledger showed in Marcus's own handwriting the payments to a New York Post reporter to plant stories about Callahan's financial instability. It showed the wire transfers to a ratings agency analyst to downgrade Callahan's credit. It showed the illegal stock shorting scheme designed to trigger a margin call and force a default. It was a step-by-step guide how to murder a company. And at the very end, the smoking gun, the acquisition file. It showed the shell company bought Callahan Innovations and its one priceless asset, the CCOM, or Callahan Compression Algorithm, for $1.2 million. The very next page was the valuation file. A different analyst paid by Marcus, valuing that same algorithm, now that it was owned by Thorne Tech at $400 million. He hadn't built an empire, he had stolen one, and he had murdered her father in the process. "This is enough to ruin him," Arthur said, his voice thick. "The SEC, the Southern District of New York. They will have a field day. He'll be buried in lawsuits for a generation." "Lawsuits?" Elara turned, and the look on her face was not one of victory. It was one of pure, righteous fury. "He gets lawsuits. He gets to pay a fine. He gets to declare bankruptcy and start over in Dubai. No." She shook her head. "No. That's not justice. That's a cost of business." "Elara, what are you saying?" She scrolled to the other files on the drive, the ones after Project Phoenix, because a man who cheats once cheats always. Project Phoenix, she said, was his first kill, but it wasn't his last. The screen flickered, showing file after file. Project Jupiter, Project Midas, Project Valkyrie. All of them the same template. Find a small, innovative company, fabricate a default, depress the stock, buy it for scrap, steal the IP. He didn't just steal from my father, Arthur. Elara said, her voice shaking. He stole from dozens of them. He's not a builder. He's a vulture. He built Thorn Industries, the entire tech division, on a graveyard. My God, Arthur breathed. I don't just want to ruin him, Elara said, her eyes fixed on the screen. I want to undo all of it. She looked up at Arthur. He gave me 5 million. I walked away with 118 million. But that's not the real number. What do you mean? The Callahan compression algorithm, she said, pointing to the line item. He stole it, but he never improved it. He just used it. His engineers in the 20 years since have just been bolting things onto it. It's the core of his entire Thorn net, his cloud computing, his data centers, his streaming service, all of it. Elara, Arthur said, a new dawning horror in his voice. What did you do? I updated it, Elara whispered. My father. He left his notebooks. He was working on phase 2 of the algorithm when he died. A version 10 times more efficient, more powerful. He just never finished the code. And I am my father's daughter. Elara said, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. I'm not just a curator. I'm a Callahan. I spent the last 2 years of my pointless marriage while he was out with Serafina in the New York Public Library. And I finished it. She opened one last file. It was a block of the most elegant, complex, beautiful code Arthur had ever seen. I don't understand, he said. He thinks he's fighting me, Elara said. He's not. He's fighting my father. The divorce papers, Arthur, the ones he wrote, read me clause 14 as to be subsection were 3. Arthur, confused, pulled up the digital copy of the divorce agreement. He scrolled. Clause 14b. Nazi. All assets not declared in this settlement remain the sole property of the party currently in possession. He looked up. Yes. That's the clause that gave you the house. It's done. No Arthur, Elara said, tapping the hard drive. The ledger, the Project Phoenix file. He never declared Callahan Innovations or its patents as assets because they're stolen. He never declared this ledger because it's incriminating. It was in my possession, in the penthouse which I had access to, before the divorce was finalized. Arthur's knees buckled. He grabbed the desk. Elara, no. Yes, she said. He didn't just give me the art. He gave me the evidence. But more, he gave me the patent back. How it's the original patent he stole. It expired 5 years ago, Elara said, her voice a razor's edge. He's been operating on an extension based on significant improvements, but he never made any. His entire multi-billion-dollar tech division is built on a lie, on a patent that is now effectively in the public domain. She tapped the new code on her screen. Until this. Callahan Compression 2.0, a new revolutionary and fully trademarked and patented algorithm, filed 6 weeks ago in Zurich under a new holding company. Arthur finally understood. It wasn't just a robbery. It wasn't just revenge. It was a coup. He's not just going to be sued, Elara said. He's not just going to be ruined. He's going to be obsolete. The Monday after the divorce was a day of tectonic shifts. At 9:15 a.m., as the stock market bell rang, Marcus Thorne was in his war room. He hadn't slept in 72 hours. He had a team of forensic accountants, high-powered lawyers, and private investigators all screaming at him on a conference line. What do you mean you can't find her? What do you mean the Swiss bank won't cooperate? I don't care if it's her house. Get a court order. Get a a drone. At 9:01 a.m., an email sent from a secure encrypted server landed in the inboxes of the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the SEC, and the Attorney General of New York. The subject line, Project Phoenix, the original sins of Thorn Industries. Attached was the complete, unredacted Callahan ledger, with a helpful annotated guide written by an anonymous, concerned party. At 9:05 a.m., Thorn Industries THRN stock was trading at 450. 12s. At 9:15 a.m., the first Wall Street Journal alert hit. Thorn Industries plummets on reports of massive, decades-long intellectual property fraud. At 9:30 a.m., the SEC halted trading. Marcus Thorn watched his life's work, his stolen work, evaporate in real time. The stock, when it reopened, was in free fall. "Sell!" he screamed at his broker. "Sell it all!" To whom Marcus, the broker, screamed back. "There are no buyers." At 10:00 a.m. in Sagaponack, Ilara Callahan was not watching the news. She was on a different video call. "The board is hesitant, Miss Callahan," a man in a suit said. "Thorn Industries it's a giant. It's a dinosaur," Ilara corrected her voice, crisp and clear. "It's a dinosaur built on a 20-year-old stolen engine, and I am here to offer you the asteroid." She was speaking to the board of Streamline Thorn's biggest competitor in the cloud computing space. "Your entire network. It's fast, but it's expensive," Ilara said. "You're spending billions on data transfer. My company can offer you a solution." She shared her screen. "This is Callahan Compression 2.0. It will reduce your data load by 90%, not 9%, 90%. It will make your network 10 times faster, 10 times more efficient, and cut your overhead by half. Your stock will double. Thorns will be worthless." The board was silent. "The price?" the CEO finally asked. "No price," Ilara said. "A partnership. We don't sell you the code. We license it. And one other thing. My new company, Callahan Innovations, is going to be bidding on some distressed assets in the coming weeks. We'll need a credit line." The CEO smiled. "Ms. Callahan, I believe we can be very good partners." The fallout was swift. It was biblical. Marcus Thorn was hit from every angle. The SEC froze his personal and corporate assets, pending investigation. The SDNY indicted him on 12 counts of fraud, conspiracy, and racketeering. Serafina Vanderbilt was the first to go. She was seen at JFK boarding a flight to Paris, with Ilara's awful orange crocodile Birkin. She left him a note scribbled on page 6 paper. "You're not rich. You're just loud." His partners, the ones he'd hidden assets from, filed a class action suit that stripped him of his remaining properties. The banks called in his loans. The penthouse was seized. The Gstad chalet was seized. The jet was seized. Within a month, Marcus Thorn, the titan, the billionaire, the king, was nothing. He was a man in an ill-fitting suit, hounded by paparazzi as he entered a courthouse, his only remaining asset, the Patek Philippe, on his wrist. And even that, he knew, would be gone by sundown. The final scene took place 6 months later. It was a crisp autumn day. A federal auction was being held on the steps of the New York County Courthouse. The assets of the Thorn Industries bankruptcy were being sold for scrap. "Lot 42A, the auctioneer called out. The original Thorn Tower building, an iconic piece of the New York skyline. Do I hear $100 million or silence? The building was a toxic asset tied up in lawsuits. 50 million silence. Come on, people. 10 million, $1, a voice called out from the back. The crowd turned. A woman in a sharp, elegant navy blue suit stepped forward. She removed her sunglasses. It was Ilara Callahan. The auctioneer stared. "Ma'am, that's not a serious bid. It's a more serious bid than Mr. Thorne's was when he bought my father's company," Elara said, her voice carrying in the sudden hush. $1 for the building, and $100 for the Thorne Industries name and all associated intellectual property. A man ran up to the auctioneer, whispering frantically. The auctioneer paled. The man was from Streamline. He was explaining that Elara's new company, Callahan Innovations, backed by Streamline, was the only entity not currently suing the Thorne estate. In fact, as the primary patent holder, they were the estate's single largest creditor. She wasn't bidding. She was collecting. "Sold," the auctioneer squeaked, banging his gavel. To Callahan Innovations for $101. Elara nodded. She put her sunglasses back on. She didn't look at the building. She walked away from the courthouse, past the scrum of reporters. She didn't get into the Thorne blue Rolls-Royce. That was in a museum now, part of an exhibit on hubris. Instead, she walked to a simple, beautifully restored car parked down the street. A 1968 Ford Mustang. Her father's car. She got in, turned the key, and the engine rumbled to life. She pulled out into traffic, not as Mrs. Thorne, not even as Ms. Callahan, the vengeful ex-wife. She drove as Elara Callahan, CEO. She had her shield. She had her sword. And now, finally, she had her father's name, restored, polished, and ready to build something new. She had signed the papers with a smile, and in the end, she hadn't just taken the car. She'd taken everything. The story of Elara Callahan isn't just about revenge. It's a masterclass in the power of underestimation. Marcus Thorne saw a pretty accessory. He never bothered to look at the mind behind the smile. He built a golden cage, and she used the bars to forge a key. She proved that the person who seems to have all the power often just has the most to lose. They thought she was a pawn in his game, but the whole time she was the one playing chess. What did you think of Elara's plan? Was it justice, or was it the most ruthless takeover of all? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you loved this story of cold, hard, calculated triumph, make sure to hit that liked button. Share this video with someone who needs to see that intelligence always wins. And most importantly, subscribe to the channel for more stories where the underestimated always get the last laugh.